It's the Final Word Cricket podcast with Adam Collins, and today we are taking it very local, indeed to my local cafe, Hot Milk in Bounds Green. And opposite me is, well, I was going to say Middlesex seamer, about to be Warwickshire seamer, been with Middlesex since 2018 in the senior squad, about to make the trip up to a new club for season 2025. Another man who is a local, who lives around the corner from me, Ethan Bamber. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks very much for having me. Yeah, very short commute to meet you this afternoon.
Yeah, and look, it is a little bit unusual for us to be interviewing a 25-year-old. You know, I was reflecting on that when preparing for the interview, that normally we've got guys on or girls on who've been playing for a long, long time, and I suppose you have, having had a substantial professional career already, but you've said before when doing interviews, you don't mind sharing quite a lot of yourself. You don't mind telling your story. You don't mind talking about who you are as a cricketer. And I thought, you know, let's make the most of that. So where do you think that comes from, that idea that because a lot of cricketers don't feel that way, that you feel pretty happy expressing yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I certainly feel kind of unworthy of being anywhere near this podcast, so that's an interesting one in its own right. But I think I enjoy talking. I enjoy talking about myself, which is probably a sign of my own ego. But I think you know sometimes what I think maybe from my own perspective, as someone who never thought they would be able to play professional sport, professional cricket, I always enjoyed listening to people who I looked up to, sharing insights into their professional career and memories of their games, whatever, but also kind of into themselves and their own lives. It seemed to make it perhaps a little bit more accessible. I certainly don't pretend or want to pretend that I am anyone's role model, but I think maybe to people kind of in the circle, in the North London bubble who want to play cricket, then maybe if they hear someone who's been in their shoes speak, it might make it feel more accessible to them. And I just enjoyed chit-chatting in general. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, it all stands to reason, because you have done quite a number of very open interviews about your story and all the rest of it. But, I mean, it is a London story to an extent, isn't it? You play for North Mid growing up. That's your club. You went to school in North London as well. Maybe we should start there, rather than starting at the end with you going up the motorway and changing clubs and changing locations and moving to Birmingham. What it is like being a kid growing up in London playing cricket? What was your childhood like in the game?
Yeah, my childhood was, in general and in cricket, a very happy one and a very privileged one. We moved when I was about 8 to a road just behind North Middlesex Cricket Club. Mm-hmm. Shortly after that summer, my brother started playing there, and I followed suit, and there I met a number of wonderful people, including Joe Cracknell and Luke Coleman, who still play for Middlesex, and we played together a lot, trained together. We used to help out Oz the groundsman, spend our summers down there. So my memory of cricket was always connected very much to happy time spent with people who you get on really well with. I knew I always enjoyed it. I never think I took it that seriously. I certainly don't remember when I was young thinking or kind of viewing it in any cold sense. I just really, really love playing, and I love the club, and it is a very special club to this day. Somewhere that's incredibly important to me and to a lot of people. So I'm not sure then where the kind of journey continued. I suppose then I started playing a bit, and then your club puts a few people forward to the borough system, and then I went through that, and somehow, and I say somehow because I played really badly in the trial games, somehow got into the winter Middlesex squad, and that's kind of, I think, when it started to become something maybe with a slightly more serious slant. But I always just really, really enjoyed it, and my older brother, 7 years older than me, was a huge influence. He taught me to play when I was younger. He played, and I just used to doing what he did. Really, I would copy him, whatever that was. And one of the things happened to be cricket.
I love that. It's very relatable that you sort of follow an older sibling into the game. You often see it with players that make professional ranks, that there is an influential sibling in there. How does it make you feel about just the very fact that you won't be a Londoner anymore? Because that's quite a big thing, right? At 25, it's a part of your identity, especially this part of London where you've played your cricket, both at North Mid and at Lords for Middlesex, the county. How do you feel about being a person that now lives in Birmingham?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I was sitting on my sofa with the packing boxes all around the other day, actually reflecting on just that, because I've spent basically, with a couple of exceptions here and there, my whole life around in about a 5 square mile radius around Ali Pali. And it's really important to me. I'm pretty precious when it comes to my coffee and my food and stuff. So you obviously sport for that in London. I think like it definitely doesn't, not to get too grandiose about it, it doesn't feel like I'm leaving London forever. It feels like a really exciting opportunity to move. I've never lived properly in another city, barring Adelaide for a couple of winters. And I'm sure that there I'll find a routine, I'll find the things, the comforts, the things that make you smile that I know I have around here. But it'll be different for sure, and I will miss it. And it is, you're right, it is part of your identity. And I'm talking to someone obviously who's moved countries in their life, as much as cities. But I wonder, how I hope that you found that in time you find a community and a kind of a rhythm of life that you enjoy just as much as maybe the place that you left.
Yeah, that's certainly the intention when you move somewhere. But it does feel like there's a closeness with you. You talk very lovingly about your upbringing and the people you grew up with at the club, and it's been a bit of a factory for Middlesex players, hasn't it? You live with Joe Cracknell, for example, and Luke Holman, who you referred to before, and others have come through that system. So, I mean, there is that. That's part of your personality, isn't it? That you form really strong bonds with people.
Absolutely. I think like as much as any of us are our own people, we're also the result of the people we spend the most time with.
Yeah.
And I've been really lucky to have some wonderful friendships, both within and without cricket. But almost all of them have been based around North London. So that will be different. But I guess it also helps like with cricket or with moving for your work, not that I really see it as work, but like you go into a ready-made community, and hopefully if I don't do anything too ridiculous, then I'll settle in there as well and build some new relationships.
How important has it been having an older brother? We referred to the sibling example that he set in the game, but especially in giving you the confidence to go on to become a professional. Again, it feels to me like that he's been a massive figure in giving you the belief that maybe isn't natural for you as a cricketer, maybe even as a person. Yeah,
that's very astute. I think I could, if I said everything that I would want to say about my older brother Theo, this would be a podcast that was far too long. He's one of the most important people, one of the most impressive people I've ever met, and the way he's encouraged and challenged me continues to do that. I feel at the same time supported and always pushed in the best way. And he's not a pushy brother, but he's someone who in his own life expects high standards for himself and doesn't want to put something out there that isn't a good reflection of himself. And that's really rubbed off on me. My parents are amazing people. I feel I'm very close to them. I feel lucky for that. But in terms of particularly my cricket, and I think where I am now as a person, having someone a little bit older but close, he's a role model who I can't even really sum up in words in terms of a lot of the things that I think about when I think of myself, I kind of map back onto him. And decisions I make always run through him. Stuff I want to write for uni, questions I've got, everything seems to run through him. And so maybe that's an insight into how important he is to me.
Yeah, I think some people who end up on the professional sport train at a relatively young age can lose sight of that to an extent. So much focus on them from being, say, 14 or 15 years old and being told how good they are all the time, and it can become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it's that humble theme that's coming through here. And touched on your parents as well. It's probably the second paragraph in every story written about you is the fact that your dad's a very high-profile actor with an IMDb list a mile long, and your mum Julia, who's an actor as well. How important do you think it was that you grew up in that kind of creative, theatrical space, and how it's informed your personality, which is obviously so different to what we typically think of with fast bowlers?
Yeah, well, I'm always happy to accept the characterisation as a fast bowler, so thanks very much. There's a few people who disagree, rightly so.
We might come to your pace in a sec, but generally speaking, having a background where you've got a thespian lifestyle, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I always not find it strange when my parents. It's all I've known, so it feels very normal to me. I'm very happy to admit my parents were way more interesting than me. I think growing up around the arts and seeing I guess there's two sides to it. So one is growing up around the arts and what that gives you kind of subconsciously, what I think that instills in you, which is a real appreciation of that part of the world, and it's something that I believe is really, really important, of the creative kind of the creative world that we all touch into, whether it's in TV or going to the theatre or whatever. I was lucky to be exposed to a lot of that, so I think that's definitely rubbed off on me and my brother and my dad. Mum's love singing, but dad and Thea are wonderful like musicians as well. Thea went to music college, so that side as well has always been there. Music and drama, whatever it is always around the house.
Yes.
And I think the flip side then is actually that I saw two people really dedicated to something that they are passionate about, and a bit like sport in that you see the end result. I think in the theatre or in a play or film, you see that as well. We see what's on the screen or on the stage, and actually I was privileged to see kind of what came behind that, the work that came behind that, the time invested, the thought, the ups and downs, I suppose, and especially like when my parents were in the theatre, the kind of relentless dedication you need to every night to be able to perform, and what that looks like in a day, in a kind of the arc of a day and the arc of a run of a show. And the other great thing it gave me is that although they were away a lot working, they were also at home a lot when they weren't working, so we had a lot of time together, and I'm very grateful for that.
I suppose it's analogous to an extent of being a professional cricketer. It's so much of what ends up in the 22 yards in the middle goes to what's happened in maybe the 22 hours before it, or some version of that, and so it applies to when working on stage like they did for so long, and you having seen that firsthand in the back of theatres and so on.
Yeah, and I think something also you touched upon, maybe me not being like the most archetypal bowler. When you perform, and one of the things my dad's always said that he loved about acting was that you can be someone else when you're on stage, and I think that's an area maybe I could improve in some ways, is taking on a persona when I walk onto the field. It's definitely something that I've kind of worked on, I think got a bit better at, but there is something nice about being a bit further away, 100 metres away from people watching you, but being able to be someone different, or a different part of yourself maybe is a better way of putting it, and to express that.
I suppose the extreme end of that is the fact that your dad, well, one of his most high-profile roles was playing Hitler, right, in Valkyrie, along with Tom Cruise, and that's just something that comes up a lot with you, that, you know, his dad played that role. I read a great profile of him which described that when they were casting, they saw the whites of his eyes and like, you'll be perfect for Hitler, like, which of course is something you can't recognise being, and that's the role, that's the mask he was able to put on. And again, what you're saying there about the need for bowlers and seam bowlers and fast bowlers, especially to find something within them that makes them perform at their very best. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I suppose it's a good thing he's not a method actor, and he was getting ready for that one. But I think, there's definitely the best. I think I listened to something ages ago with Andre Nell when he said he used to like completely take on. He had a whole like character that he was, and something else with Dale Steyn where he just used to try and make a change in his mind when he put the shirt on. I think the second one's probably a bit more accessible to me, but there's definitely something around like when you go onto that field, you can't apologise for being there, and actually anything that happens outside the line is not the problem of the other people who you're playing against, and they're not going to take it easy on you or not try their best because of how you might be feeling. You have a responsibility to your team and to yourself to find a way of bringing as much of what you have on that day into the kind of competitive nature, and making sure that you don't take a backward step.
And look, maybe there are other parts of your life that are to your advantage on this front, right? So, like, I mean, you studied theology at university. I mean, there must be a very small subset in the Venn diagram, you know, seamers, fast bowlers, professional cricketers, and those who've taken an interest in religion to that extent. I mean, are you religious, or was this more an academic interest that you fell into at university?
Yeah, no, I'm actually not religious at all. I'm kind of, what's the right way of saying it? Racially Jewish, I suppose, like through my ancestry, through my mother's side. When I was at junior school, I was a chorister that was in a Christian chapel, but I'm not religious at all. I don't practice any religion. I was just super interested in it. I always thought I would want to do history at uni, and then I just had really, really good teachers, and again, my brother had initially applied before he went to music college to do theology at uni. So I guess a bit of me was like, well, I could do what he did.
Right.
So yeah, no, I just really interested in it. I think like probably because of some of my earlier life experiences, I've been like around religion, sacred places, like religiosity, if that's a word,
Yep.
and the practice of it, and was always just like interested in it. Yeah. It's a bit random, but yeah.
I feel like we've had a missed opportunity. Did you say you're a choir boy as well?
Well, yeah.
To an extent.
Yeah.
We missed something here. There is a Bounds Green choir, which I've been singing in.
Oh, no way.
And it's the best thing I've done in
Really?
years.
Oh, that's cool.
Had I known, I would have dragged you along.
I would have reluctantly come for sure. Yeah.
You would
it
enjoy
would have
I
stopped me
suspect.
singing at home and annoying Joe.
It is the most wholesome thing.
Really?
It is
That's
stunning.
so cool.
Up at the tennis club around the corner.
That's quality.
Yeah, there you go on a Monday night. If you're ever back in London, Ethan, you can
There's
join us.
incentive enough.
Absolutely. And other interests too that extend beyond cricket in sport. I mean, I know you played hockey at a decent level, and that's part of you too. So again, I'm getting this impression of someone who clearly isn't from the usual conveyor belt of professional sport, but you had a diversity of interests before you ended up being a professional.
Yeah, I think again, like I was hugely fortunate in my childhood to have access to a lot of things. I just played hockey at school, but I loved it very much. I think also, coming into the kind of granular detail of my the latter part of my journey through the academy and then onto the professional path at Middlesex, there are a lot of sliding doors moments there that might not happen. I think it's probably fair to admit, and not overly self-deprecating to admit, that it was not a given that I would make it from onto the academy and then from the academy onto the professional staff. And I feel like there are a lot of things that happened to allow me to do that. Some hard work and stuff on my part, but also, people putting faith in me, opportunities arising that might not have done otherwise. So I feel, grateful for that.
And look, it's not just a story of Middlesex either. You get picked to play for England as an under-19s player and do exceptionally well. I mean, I know that there's this trope with you about being so apologetic and basically apologising for who you are and all the rest of it with cricket. And that at one point was your social media status, wasn't it?
It was
I'm
a
sorry.
mistake. I am trying to change my apologising.
But still, nevertheless, I mean, making it to play for England as a junior, and your generation, Will Jacks, Tom Banton, who've both gone on to play for England in the senior side. But at that World Cup, you did exceptionally well. You were England's leading wicket taker and exceeded expectations from talking to players who were with you in that group. That you were one of many bowlers, and you weren't the quickest in the group, and you didn't stand out the most, but you ended up having the best results, which might have been something that signalled a bit about what would happen with you at Middlesex too.
Oh, cheers! Yeah, if you look at that group, there's some of the lads whose careers have gone like that, and some have gone in different directions, like myself. But no, it was really fun, and actually the selection for that originally, I got a call my first week at uni, Freshers Week, from the selector, and he made it very clear that they'd picked 6 bowlers, and you have to get scanned when you picked on the 19s, and they picked 6 bowlers and they all had stress fractures, and I was very much the last reserve. And I was told that in no uncertain terms, which is kind of quite refreshing, I think, because I was so surprised. It was quite cool. You got all this free kit. Yeah. Made some really good friendships there, which endure still. Got to go to New Zealand, South Africa, unbelievable, play with some incredible players like Harry Brook, Will and Tom, as you've mentioned. Oh,
Brooke was in that team as well.
Yeah, he was the captain. Okay. We had quite an unceremonious departure from the tournament, but it was so fun. And when you're in that and you're treated like this professional, and they try and make it as close to a thing as possible. And it was awesome, and you feel so important and all that stuff. And then I remember, because then I came back to uni and then to Middlesex for my first summer, on a summer uni contract, whatever it was. And everyone was just like, oh mate, that was really cool, well done. And they were really nice, really supportive. But you just realise, it just put it in such perspective that it was a great thing, but that is not the day job, so to speak. And it's that is a step on the path that has many, many steps to us all in professional county cricket trying to, I guess, be as good as we can be, or to play in touch degree, whatever it is. But it was just interesting because it felt like the biggest thing in the world when I was playing in it. And some people have sent me these ridiculous celebrations for wickets, I'd literally just won the World Cup single-handedly. So embarrassing. But and it was awesome. But that's all it was. It was just a really cool experience. But it's so different to what cricket is actually like. I felt. Yeah.
But it did vault you in, didn't it? I mean, having had that experience at the World Cup at the start of 2018, you get your first chance in the senior team, the 4-day team for Middlesex later in 2018, and it's a great start. I mean, 28 at 20 in about 4 games or something like that to finish the campaign. Super consistent, learning from bowlers, I suppose, Stephen Finn, Tim Murtagh, who you were routinely compared to when you were teammates. Having had that chance to be in that high-performance England bit, if you like, then coming to play for Middlesex, it seemed like the perfect pathway through for you.
Definitely. I don't think I've probably ever like reflected on what that tournament and experience gave me properly, but I would imagine if I hadn't, if the performances had been different, it might have put me in a very different state going into the summer. And then, as you say, like towards the back end of that year, the kind of cricket management, I guess, at the club changed a little bit.
Yep.
There were quite a lot of injuries, and it basically meant that they had X amount of bowlers for 6 games, so I got to play straight through. And yeah, I was actually thinking about that the other day, and it feels like such a whirlwind. Like Owen Morgan was playing in the team, like it's so cool. And a bit of me wish I could go back to that kind of like wide-eyedness sometimes, because it all did just kind of happen. And it was a really, really fun 6 weeks. I remember that.
Yeah, and again, like suddenly you're in the home dressing room at Lord's, right? I mean, these things are crazy. Like going from a university. I mean, yes, you've played for England, sure, but home dressing room at Lord's, walking out for Middlesex, walking out alongside, as you say, Owen Morgan, or maybe Steve Finn's another example of that, who played a lot of international cricket at Lord's, and you're now sharing a dressing room with them. Like, how did you interpret yourself in that time? Like, did you feel like you belonged at that juncture? Or did you feel like, I have earned my spot in the team? Did that was that what informed how you bowled so well at the very start, or was it more just like ignorance to an extent of what you were walking into and the freedom that sometimes comes with that?
It's interesting. I definitely didn't feel I'd earned my spot. Like, I never had that thought. I think like if you looked at my second team performances, you might say, he deserved a run, and I think that's probably what was thought. I think I'd done fine in the second team, pretty consistently. It felt like a huge step up. I remember feeling like a weird mix, which probably kind of sums up a lot of my attitude to myself, which is that on the one hand, I felt incredibly out of place and a bit like, oh my god, like when are they going to realise that I'm playing in this game and stop the whole thing and get me off the field? And there was, and some of that was probably helped by the ignorance, not really knowing. I look back now, I didn't really understand my game. I just kind of ran in and bowled.
Okay.
Tried to bowl pretty straight and accurate. Kind of went alright. But then on the flip side, this thing that if you said do you want the ball? I would always say yeah. I would, and I always want to bowl. And if you said, okay, well if you don't think you're good enough, you should give up. You should walk off the pitch and let someone else do it. And I would be absolutely no way. I want to play. So there's always this strange balance that I'm kind of fighting in myself between someone who can quite easily be led to believe that they shouldn't be there, and also someone who deep down probably has an overly inflated opinion of my own ability and thinks that I want the ball and I should be playing and I should be in the team and X, Y, and Z. So I don't know if I've expressed that well.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think if you're not feeling that, you put it well yourself. If you don't want the ball in your hand, then that might be a whole different conversation.
Yeah,
that's a precondition to being a bowler, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there is a couple of there is a blip. 2019, where by the end of the season you're on loan at Gloss.
Yeah.
It's a story as old as time. Second year blues in all sorts of sports, and you really do experience that, right? And it does migrate into 2020 as well, which is a very unusual season. But what it felt like for you when it wasn't just coming as naturally as it had in 2018, and how difficult you found life as a professional in that second year, when really you're only 20 years old or something like that. That's a pretty steep learning curve, surely.
It was interesting because the 6 weeks at the end of the 2018 season, kind of fairy tale. Jono was the interim head coach, who's now the head coach of Middlesex still, and then he left, and Stuart Law came in over the winter when I was at university. Stu obviously storied international coach, amazing player, all this stuff. and I found myself then out of the team at the start of the year, where if the season had continued from 2018, I might have kind of stayed in it. I then like really struggled to get back in, as you say, and actually the loan to Gloss was the best thing that happened. I was really, because I was actually bowling all right, and I was really frustrated. I couldn't get in the team. Like they're going with, we had a lot of really, really good, amazing, older, senior, way better bowlers, and they're picking them fine. But I got this opportunity to go to Gloucester, and I think I basically just turned up. They had no bowlers; they were all injured, and they were just like, "Good luck, here's the ball." And they were so supportive, but I just felt so free, and I just like rediscovered a bit of that like real enjoyment, like not putting pressure on myself to make a ground-breaking performance to get in the team, because I knew I was going to play, and I knew I was going to play these 2 games because they didn't have any bowlers.
Right.
So that was amazing, and then like I managed to then finish the season back with the middle, all good. But that was really like, it was nice just to get into, I think, a different environment when I felt a bit like stuck, probably having expected things from 2018 just to go like, wow, this is great, this will just continue. I think it was nice just to, after a difficult start to the summer, to be dropped into a new environment and then kind of re-energized.
And then you, like everyone, has their life come to an abrupt halt in the, I suppose it's the February of 2020, isn't it? Again, you're still very young and finding your way in the game. You've had this kind of complicated 2019, and then the game shuts down. Now, I mean, lockdown did all sorts of different things to different people. Everyone's got their own story. But you've been pretty open about the fact you completely lost your way for a while there when it came to the way you were treating your body. And how it started to have an effect on your day job, which was being a cricketer. Yeah,
definitely. I think I don't know whether you go into some details there, but like I basically, there are a couple of like external factors alongside the biggest one of the pandemic. But both my parents were quite unwell going into the pandemic, and then obviously my kind of release from that, which was always cricket and the training and like looking forward to the summer, all of that stuff. For all of us, because of way more important things. So it was shut down, and I think I then thought, and it came from the best place. I was like, right, I'm going to make sure that like whatever happens over this period, I'm going to be in the best shape when we come back. I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to like come out of this unbelievable. And so I just started basically like training loads, like lots of physical training. Obviously, we can do much cricket, like lots of physical training. And I'd always had like an obsessive part to my personality, like, and probably helped in some respects. But this really like took over. I was kind of doing between 2 and 4 physical sessions a day, and then like the difficult thing then was trying to like, it also crossed over to restricting what I was eating, to the point where I was probably, and I kind of touched on it a little bit at uni when people thought I may have like orthorexia. Which is where you I think where the definition where you have a misrepresentative understanding of what you're putting in your body compared to like what you're putting out, and that really got heightened. I had what was later described as kind of disordered eating. I lost a lot of weight. I ended up about like 62 kilos, which is pretty light. As context, I think I'm like 84 now. So. Right. And I think the worst side of it was that, or 2 bad sides of it. One, I didn't really realise in one way what was happening. Like, I thought I was doing the right thing. And the second bit is that, you know, while my parents were going through this really difficult thing, and I felt this was an area that I could control, that control actually led to losing a lot of myself. So I didn't laugh probably for about 3 months. I felt hungry all the time, like you're tired, all this stuff. I mean, people had way bigger problems, and it's something I brought upon myself. But it was difficult, and I think I mistreated my body, and as a result, probably mistreated the people who were closest, and I was closest to, and that is something that I still am kind of disappointed in. And now hopefully I have a slightly better relationship with training and with food.
Yeah, right. I mean, it isn't something that people talk about an awful lot, is it? In professional sport, no. Eating disorders is not something that flows off the tongue. We talk about mental health a lot, right? Like we talk about anxiety and depression, and now increasingly neurodivergences in brains, which is really important, I think.
Of course.
But eating disorders almost feels taboo.
Yeah, definitely.
Or taboo adjacent, at least. Like, it's not something that people know an awful lot about to start with, I don't suppose. But the fact that you've lived that, I mean, losing 22 kilos while trying to be a seamer that just sounds.
Yeah.
I mean, objectively, you must be able to see now that was something that was
Absolutely.
never going to end well.
Yeah, and so the kind of conclusion to that story is then as we re-entered cricket at the end of that summer, and I thought I was in this amazing place, I was then unable to perform, and there was a pre-season game where everything should have gone well, like I was trying so hard, and I just thought the ball was coming out of my hand all right, but there was just I was just so far off the pace, and that led to kind of a exposure, I suppose, from people who had my very best interests at heart, and then progress from there. But I think looking back, there were so many signs during it, not only the day-to-day feeling, but kind of waking up in the morning when I thought I'd go for a run and kind of sitting at the bottom of the stairs in tears, as I'm putting my trainers on, and then my mum coming down and seeing that, and then me still going for the run anyway, or when we re-entered stuff trying to meet some mates for food but taking Tupperware because I didn't want to eat what they're all these things which are just seem ridiculous when you put them out loud, but made so much sense to me at the time. There was one that was final example where the shop came, the delivery shop came, and I always got this 0% yogurt, and they had done a swap, and it was 10% fat yogurt, and I literally had a tantrum. I was 20 years old and I had a tantrum in front of my mum that I didn't have 0% fat yogurt, and it just seems ridiculous now to look back on it. But as I say, it made so much sense, and it was so important at the time. It felt like completely the right thing to do, to get angry at the fact I wouldn't, I'd have to consume more calories at dinner or something, which is just remarkable. But so it's probably too detailed.
No, not in the slightest. I mean, again, sitting opposite you, hearing you, it sounds like you, at some level, it's a workaholic thing as well, right? You worked out lots because, there was a food thing going on, but also you wanted to control the controllables, and so you working as hard as you could, maybe to be a substitute for what you thought was a natural ability that you didn't have. Would that be kind of near the mark, that you felt you needed to do the extra yard every single day to keep up with everybody else?
I think from a cricket perspective, you're spot on. From a wider perspective, I think it felt like an area that I had some stake in. Right. My parents' health was out of my control. The world was out of my control. But this, I could control every day how much energy I expended and how little food I took in, or how much food I took in, whatever. And then the other bit about cricket, I think that still is within me. I'm not kind of blinded enough to think that I have any extraordinary talent, like an X Factor talent. That's fine. I'm very comfortable with that now. And I do think I have to get every ounce of myself, and I do think I probably have to work harder than the average person. And I know that the kind of player that I am, so I'm just going a slightly different direction now, but the kind of player I am, I have to be between a 7 and a 9 out of 10 every time I go on the field, and I get less leeway, and that's fine, because that's the bracket I'm in. I'm not someone who can be a 2 or a 3 out of 10 and then have an 11 out of 10 day. I hope that I can make those contributions in my time, but consistency on the field and therefore off the field is really important to me and the kind of player I am, and I enjoy that. And if that is as good as I'll ever be, which is a really consistent county player, if I'm able to be even that, then as long as I feel I'm getting the most out of myself, then I'm comfortable with that.
And I suppose to those at Middlesex at the time, whether it's Stuart Law or Alan Coleman, who I know is a really important part of your story as well, having run the academy and run the club for a long time there as well, you wouldn't have appeared consistent. You would have appeared anything but consistent when your weight plummeted and you weren't able to do the core thing that you were there to do when returning from the COVID break, and then obviously only a handful of games to end the 2020 season. It could have been terminal for your career. I mean, you probably had a pretty small window to sort it out. That must have been quite a challenging moment. I don't know. Did you even realise that your career might have been in jeopardy? Did they have the conversation with you? How did that all play out behind the scenes?
I think thank you for bringing me back to that, because it's important to acknowledge that period. I think I definitely did realise after the Northampton pre-season game that this was pretty serious, purely career-wise. That I was a long way off where I needed to be. Alan, who was my academy director and then the bowling coach under Stu, he pulled me off the field about 80 overs in this Northampton game and basically said what's going on, and then I kind of broke down to him. It all came out, and from there progress went forward. him and James Fleming, who was our S&C coach at the time, were unbelievably supportive from a professional and a like pastoral standpoint in terms of being on their phone all the time, checking in, making sure that I had the space to like work it out for myself, but also the necessary support and kind of intervention to be guided through that period from like a physiological standpoint or whatever. Alan like gave me the confidence to then go and speak to Stu about it, and I'm sure Stu won't mind me saying, I think like he found it surprising. I think like his initial reaction was like, why don't you eat more? I remember we sat in this coffee shop in Mill Hill, but he was so like, as I tried to explain it to him, which I felt, because like, this amazing cricketer, our head coach, like I was quite nervous, and he like never did he say anything like terminal about cricket or judgmental. He said, look, I can't play you next week because it's not fair to you, but whatever support you need. And I think that really like, yeah, I probably didn't appreciate at the time what a thing that was for someone like him to give to someone like who's basically like no one in the team to me, and how much confidence that gave me. And then later in that summer, and I guess Stu and Alan would have had something to do with it, Gus came up to me at a training session and basically said like, we're going to extend your contract. And like there was basically no reason for them to do that. I think I had another year anyway, like, and to give me the confidence then that at least for the next like 24 months I would have a job was, yeah, I guess that kind of settled me into the thinking that I could now progress and nothing had to happen right now. And I guess I was fortunate that COVID summer was short, so like the pain of not playing, being picked was short. But yeah, I played one game at Kent. I bowled horrendously badly, and I remember driving back through London, and I think I called Alan. I was like, "What is good? Like, is this going to get better?" And I don't remember exactly what he said, but I definitely came off the phone feeling better than when I gone on it. Yeah, and I, them at Middlesex, my family at home, hugely, indebted always for the support.
So it could have been a lot. I would think that for a lot of people, I probably put myself in this category who know sod all about eating disorders.
Mm-hmm. Well, me too, really.
Yeah, I mean, the reflexive thing would be just go to get a hamburger, right? Which, as I understand it, can be the worst thing to hear when you've got these someone imploring you to eat conventionally. Can only do more damage because of what you were describing before, the disconnect between the way you were interpreting your body and the way that the wider world was seeing your body, and that they didn't relent to that temptation, that they gave you the latitude to sort of that yourself on your terms. Yeah,
I think you sum it up perfectly. I think I also didn't really understand. I guess you rewire your own brain, don't you, to think like a certain thing. So I saw, like I said, like I thought what I was doing made total sense.
Yep.
And I think actually it took the professional side. Like I've never asked for more support from my family ever, but they're so close to me almost. I think it needed the professional side with Alan and James to almost be a bit more like tell you at points, like this is not right, this is not working. Have you tried this? And that really helped. And yeah, as I can't probably do justice in words to that, but probably saved my career. Definitely their support, and put me in a place where I feel lucky now. I'm content, happy. I enjoy food. I enjoy training. And like it's a part of me always. I think with anyone who's like has that obsessive side, it's something you live with always and you manage. And there's points when it kind of gets fine-tuned a little bit and the volume gets turned up. But I think because of the skills that because of the support they showed me, and they gave me the confidence eventually then to speak to someone, which certainly equipped me with some skills to deal with, to kind of self-monitor almost if those things come back up. And it's definitely not, as I say, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not done.
Yes.
But it's, I feel happy and content now, and that is in no small part. Thanks to them.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. So, is there a little flare up at a different point?
Yeah.
For whatever reason,
for sure.
It might just be something, aesthetic that you pick up, and it might be something that no one else would necessarily notice, but you might notice that there might be the risk of having that relationship with food get to an unhealthy place again. But you've got techniques, I suppose, to bridge you through. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I definitely don't want to pretend that I've got it cracked. So, but I think now I have people I can speak to all kind of, I think I recognise it more early, and now almost like things that I can put in place to try and make sure that I don't slip too far down the hole.
I think it's brilliant you're talking about this, by the way. I think that
thank
for a
you.
lot of people,
No.
the temptation would be just to forget it ever happened
No.
and see it as a sign of perceived weakness and not want to share it. But I think that because you are and you're happy to have these types of conversations, it might be that there's some 20-year-old kid in 5 years' time that hears your story, and you might be a good source of support for them, because it's unrealistic to think that there's no one else in professional cricket who's gone through this, right? It's naive to suggest that there aren't people who are living with different versions of this out there in professional ranks and below.
No, for sure. And I don't, you very kindly said earlier that I could kind of, if I went off on a tangent, it was okay, and I don't want to get on too much of a soapbox, but I think like when I was first asked about this period, I felt really strange, and I still do to some extent. Like I don't feel particularly special or like unique, and I don't know even if it's my place really, as you say, to talk about this. But for some reason, I seem to not mind opening up about it, and for some reason some people seem to respond to it, and so I never want my discussion of it to feel to anyone like imposing or preachy, or like, as I said, like I've somehow found the light or come through, like cracked something. But I suppose just like all of us who have the human experience, like there are things, parallels, overlapping moments with other people, and maybe through discussion of those and listening and like exploring them, it can help others. It definitely helps me talking about it selfishly, but I definitely don't want to preach or create things for people that aren't there, if that makes sense.
No, of course it does. We're all just doing our best to get by, aren't we? At some deeper level, we're all just doing our best, and you're obviously been able to bounce out of it from a cricketing perspective, that substantial career-threatening dip. I mean, it's remarkable to think that only 8 or 9 months on from that, when the new season starts at Lords in 2021, you were outstanding. I mean, that was the season I was working on your games week to week, and you were comfortably the club's best bowler. You took 52 wickets in the season, one of the best returns in the entire country across both divisions. That Mini Mertz nickname that tends to follow you around, I suppose, but it was more than that. It wasn't just that you could do what Tim Murtagh did and bowl from the other end down the slope, and he was bowling up the slope. It wasn't just that. It was that you had just taken this massive step up as a cricketer, and you'd gone from being one of many Middlesex bowlers to being central to their fortunes week to week. That must have been so rewarding for you as a professional, knowing that you'd reached a new level, having been at such a low only a few months prior.
I was really, really happy with that season. And like, as a club, like, I was in that weird kind of conference-y thing.
Yeah.
That
I love that.
No one really understood.
I love the conferencing. I'll bring it back for me.
It was cool to play different people. But, and obviously at the start of the year there were no crowds, and I know for a lot of people that season, a lot of like storied professionals, that season will kind of be a write-off, whatever happened. But for me it was super important, and to prove to myself that I kind of could do it. I think that's almost like a template really for how I would like to be, which is consistent and threatening with the ball always. It was nice, and it was like, it was just a good summer.
Yeah, for people who haven't seen you bowl too often, or maybe people listening outside of England, I mean, you're a classic. Keep the stumps in play, keep both edges in play. Often have the keeper up to the stumps, which I know is not always. You talk about ego and bowlers and so on. And
I've definitely had my disagreements about that, but yeah.
But I mean, occasionally working for you with having other modes of dismissal being in the game, keeping batters in their crease, and that type of thing. I mean, maybe let's go to that. I mean, your pace, right? I mean, you being not an out-and-out fast bowler, but still enjoying great returns, doing what it is that you do. Like, how do you deal with that tension as a cricketer who presumably would love to bowl quicker? Wouldn't everyone love to bowl quicker? But it's still kind of working for you, doing what you're doing. And there are examples throughout the history of the game of guys who've been old-fashioned medium fast and made it work. Surely you take inspiration from that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think you've got a good Aussie listenership. I probably confirm every stereotype they have about lucky English cricketers who wouldn't be professionals if they grew up in Australia, and are only successful because of the results of the wickets they play on. And
You've got to get away from this, Ethan. You're a much better cricketer than that.
They wouldn't be entirely wrong.
No,
but I'm not I don't bowl that quick, and I would love to bowl quicker. And I think it's interesting to have this conversation now because I've just come off the back of a disappointing summer for me, with the expectations that I set myself. It was fine stats wise if you want to be cut and dry, but it was nowhere near what I expected myself. And for the past probably 2 years or year, the pace thing has really been on my mind. Got to bowl quicker, got to bowl quicker. If I can do what I can do, 5 mile an hour quicker, who knows what that could be. And actually, I think in that, and I've had some fantastic kind of advice and patience from people at Middlesex. I think in that maybe I didn't appreciate one of the things that maybe made me alright as a bowler, and my kind of reframed bit for this year and going forward is the pace is always in the background. You're always trying to get better, trying to be more efficient in your action. Hopefully as I mature physically, all those things, that will come. But I think now I bowl at a pace where when I'm in nice rhythm and stuff, where it's quick enough, as they say, maybe not quick enough for test cricket or whatever, but quick enough. But actually, if I go from being the 60th quickest in the country to the 30th quickest, but go from being the whatever most accurate to the 30th most accurate, then that is no use to anyone. And actually, trying to kind of focus in on what might make me unique or more threatening, and trying to be the absolute best at that. I think that's kind of where my mind is now, because ultimately I believe whatever is meant to happen to you will happen, in terms of the big journey in the game. But my job now is to go to Warwickshire and get into the Warwickshire team and to help them win games and to be the most consistent and the most threatening bowler that I can be for as long as I can do it. And that is not going to come by always chasing something I don't have. I hope I never stop wanting to get better, but also appreciating maybe where I am and trying to double down on some of the things that may make me effective, if that makes sense.
Just an acceptance story, isn't it?
I think you're right.
Being at peace with who you are and not trying to, I don't know, the probability of you bowling 85 mile an hour, no matter what you do, you can't. You don't. It's not what you do.
I blame my parents for that.
There is a genetic piece to this, and there's just the type of way, the type of bowler you are. But trying to specialise in what you've been good at, and as I say, there've been many bowlers across Test history. We're only a generation from, not even that, from when Vernon Philander was the number one bowler in the world, bowling at about 120 to 125 kilometres an hour. So there are examples of that in the professional game. But the seasons that follow that bumper 2021. Which you become Middlesex Player of the Year in 2021, I should add as well. You get the county cap in 2022, which is always a significant thing for professional players.
The proudest moment of my career.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can imagine. Right, you've come through the academy, this group of players with you, and it's not a bumper season in the way it was in 2021, but you are still valued, you are loved, you're appreciated, and that's recognised with that club cap. I never thought, as I said, that was a huge, really special moment for me, and I never thought that would happen. So it's really sick. Yeah. And you get the chance in Division 1. You're leading an attack in Division 1 in 2023. It's kind of interesting when you look at it now. You get promoted and there's a fifer against Warwickshire. But one of the interesting things about your career, and maybe you touched on it before without realising it, you said you always need to be 7 out of 10 to 9 out of 10, but it's improbable with the way your career's gone so far. You'll have the 11 out of 10 days and you don't really worry too much about that. You've got an extraordinary number of 2-fers, 3-fers, 4-fers. You very, 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 very rarely miss out. Excellent overall career numbers, but only 2 5-fers across however many seasons now. One of those coming in 2023. That's an interesting statistical quirk, and that might kind of go to the fact that you are the banker rather than, I guess, the out-and-out match winner, for want of a better descriptor.
I think you're right. It's definitely something. It's actually talking about being happy with what you've got. That is something I'm not happy with, and I think the reason is because I look at someone, two people, just Tim Merton, Toby Ron Jones, who I've been lucky to play a lot with and who have been hugely important to me. They won games for their side, and Toby particularly in the last couple of years, or 2 of the last 3 years, some of his performances, when it just feels inevitable that he's going to run through a team, and when you're looking for someone to stand up, and he is captain in the year, just got over 50 wickets, and he just tears through them. And there's been a lot of periods when I've felt in spells when I've been bowling well and felt like all over people, and I might get 1 or 2,
Yep.
and like he gets 5, and it's something about like staying on it and that like real like relentless, ruthless finishing off a job that I need to get a lot better at, because like fifers win games, and if you want to be part of teams that like win stuff and do well and stay in Div 1, you need to perform and win games for your side. So like ultimately I want to be consistent, and if you get 3 in both innings, 6 if you go 6 wickets every game, you'd be unbelievable. But like there's going to be games where you don't get any, and there's got to be games where you take big hauls. And so I think I've searched really hard for that in the past. Now I think I just need to get better at bowling and then trust that will come, if that makes sense.
Might go to what you were describing before about playing a role, like putting on that proverbial Superman cape and going, right, no, I am going to be the guy who saves the day or who defines the day or whatever it might well be. And I suppose you'd interpret that going to a new club as a really good place where you can grow as a player in the second half of your 20s.
For sure. I think probably one thing I've realised about myself actually is that the harder I try for something particular, like the further away it gets, I think I bring a lot of tension, like too much expectation and pressure on myself. I think that happened this year probably. I wanted to be the leader of the attack. I wanted to be that person following on from 2023. I think actually a real commitment and focus to a process that I think works. And people talk a lot about process, and like I'm very good at trusting the process when the outcome's good. I'm not so good when the outcome's not good. But like I do think for me, I have to like remain. Some people I think can be like, right, this is my day, I'm going to clean up. That doesn't seem to work for me, because I kind of get very everything clenches up and I look too far ahead. So it's something and it's probably an area of like psychological area I need to really work on, is channeling that same like determination and kind of not aggression, but determination is probably the best word, but channeling it into like a really clear, consistent process and just committing to that and then trusting that the outcome will take care of itself.
It's remarkable how different Lords was in 2024 compared to the way that it was under lights in 2021.
Oh my god, yeah, some of those wickets were a disgrace in 2021.
Well, I don't know. I would say that the competitive balance between bat and ball is never easy to achieve, and it just happened to be that
that's a good
you played a number of home games at Lords that season where the conditions were absolutely cherry ripe for bowling, seam up, and lights on a lot of the time. Probably more when you were batting than when you were bowling, come to think of it. But still, the point stands that some spicy games that ended inside 3 days and that kind of thing, which suited you then. And whereas this year, I mean, scores have been in excess of 500 routinely at Lords in a very different environment for bowlers. Sort of interested in your decision-making process that made you eventually think that moving clubs was the right thing to do at this point of your career, up to Birmingham, up to Warwickshire, another test playing ground, Division 1 county at the moment, and Middlesex aren't in the top flight right now. But how you happened upon that decision, how difficult it was, and how you see that as being something that can shape the next few years.
Yeah, I think firstly, to take one thing from the middle of that question, it was a very difficult decision. Middlesex has been a wonderful club to and for me. They've been hugely supportive, as we've spoken about. I have some truly great friends there who I've been lucky enough to play a lot of cricket with, and leaving those people, leaving a place which has a place like Lords, a place which has like those big memories, but also just like the time spent with those people, the comfort in a club, the feeling of belonging somewhere, that was difficult. But I think I never want to feel comfortable in my career, and this was a decision much more about me than it was about Middlesex, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't to get away from anything as much as to try and go towards something for myself. I definitely, when it got to the 1st of June, which is the kind of date you can chat to people in county cricket, I definitely hadn't decided. It wasn't like I'm leaving, where hopefully I can go somewhere. It was like, let's see. I was very fortunate, I never thought I'd play a season, let alone have the choice of where I played. So I was very fortunate to have that choice. I was surprised and pleased that, you know, a couple of people were interested.
I was going to say that was, I mean, in our circles, you were hot property for a couple of months there. Like, people were talking about, where's Ethan Bamber going to land next year, right? You must have sensed that.
Slow news day, was it?
Well, you know what it's like in county cricket. No, everyone talks about where people might be moving to, and
yeah, of course.
It was an open secret that you might be leaving. Like, did you sort of, was there a tipping point where you're like, no, I probably should commit to making a move and we'll find a new club, or was it ultimately a Warwickshire, Middlesex, poring over it for weeks?
Well, I guess the process started a little bit earlier. Like, prior to Christmas, I decided not to sign a contract extension, and it was important to me because of my history and relationships in Middlesex that the process was done in the right way.
Yep.
And so, you know, I spoke to Alan, I spoke to Jono through the process, and Jono particularly was fantastic. He had grown up at Middlesex, and although he was a much better bowler than me, he left at a similar point in his career for his own reasons, and it worked for him. And so as a result of that, he was always nothing but supportive. He said very sweetly, you know, we want to stay, but whatever you think is best, we'll support that. And that was, you know, I have some mates who've moved, and they haven't had quite such a smooth ride out of clubs where they've grown up, so I feel really, really grateful for that. Then kind of it gets to the point, and into June, then when like the chats are happening, whatever, one of my you don't want to leave. I don't want to leave Middlesex just like in the lurch, because they obviously have to either find their players for next year or not, depending on who's staying going. And likewise with, you know, anywhere you may want to go. So when I went up to see Edgbaston, I told myself, like, look, I'm happy, really, really happy to stay. Love the club, unless it's like an oh my god, then I'm just gonna stay in Middlesex and try and that's how I felt really when I got there. You know, where I was told I might fit into the group, what might be available there. I think for me it's the idea of, like, I feel there I will know how good I could be, whether that is really good or no better than I am now. Like, everything is there. It seems part of something, and it just felt like then the right time. And I was stewing over it, and a lot of chats with my parents, my girlfriend, all sorts of stuff to like try and work out. And I felt I was never given advice in terms of you should. They just basically listened. Yeah. And then it sounds a bit cliche, but I basically woke up one morning and I was like, I kind of know now. And yeah, and then and you know, it might go really well, it may not, but I haven't once felt it wasn't the right decision since I made it. Like
a lot of big decisions in life, like when you know, right?
Exactly.
It's there. And does it sort of fuel ambition? I mean, again, we're coming full circle to an extent. You've played for England as a junior, acknowledging everything we've talked about today, but you know, you're still, relatively speaking, young in your career. Do you have that dream of one day pulling on the England cap, and how you might chart a course to that from where you are at the moment, and at the spot you filled at Middlesex, how that might evolve at your new home, so that you might put yourself in that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think my perspective on it's changed maybe slightly from when I was younger. I have that dream of playing Test cricket for England. That's a dream since I was 10 years old. That's all what I've wanted to do. And that is always the kind of North Star when I wake up in the morning and go to training. But it's also not something that I think about daily, because I think now I'm also not an idiot. Like, I couldn't be further away from the Test team, so that's fine. I believe that, like, if I go in every day and I try and get the most out of myself, and I become the best version of myself, then if I'm meant to play cricket at that level, it will happen. And if not, then I'll be the best cricketer for Warwickshire that I can be. And that, like, I'm comfortable with that now. I think, like, I'll never stop dreaming of playing for England, because, like, that's sick. And I think anyone who says they don't want to, well, they've got a different perspective from me. That'd be so cool. But it might not happen, and that is the reality of the job that we do. And that's also fine, because I'm really, really lucky to play, and especially with what we've talked about, like, to be able to move, to be able to go into this exciting new opportunity, and to see what's there, and to see, like, what I can get out of myself and what I can give to them. That stimulates me now, like, a lot more than that goal, which is kind of like far away in the shadows. It's not even a goal, it's like a dream. And if I wake up one day and I'm there, then that's awesome. And as I said, if not, then I think I still feel really happy and driven every day to do something I love. So.
Brilliant. all we can say from a podcast perspective is that we wish you extremely well on your move to Birmingham at Warwickshire. We'll be tracking your progress very closely on the show, of course, as well. And most grateful for you coming on today and being so open on a whole range of topics. You're a very impressive young man, and more power to you. Ethan Bamber, thanks for being on The Final Word.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.